The second side of this is they're like, well, Jesus never dealt with suicidal thoughts himself. And I go, okay, let's talk about that. Or let's go to Matthew 4. The very next set of things that the enemy takes him to is he takes him to a tall building and says, jump. He's been tempted in every way. The enemy is saying, end your life, take it away, be done. And he goes, and he says this, he says, don't tempt the Lord.
Hey friends, my conversation with David Galvin was so good that we did not want to cram it all into one episode. We're going to split it into two. So here's the second part of our conversation, and I hope you enjoy. Okay, so let's talk about faith-based organizations. Let's talk
Yeah.
about churches, because I know that's part of where your heart is and definitely part of the heart of James Trail as well. And so, I feel like it can be a toughie because I know that it's difficult for folks, pastors, ministers, people, to realize that for us to say something simple,
Yeah.
like, well, you just need to pray, or you just need more faith. Like, well, of course we need to pray. We all need more faith. Like, that's always true. But that comment may or may not meet the need of someone
Right.
who's in the emotional state that they're in, and maybe not ready to receive that.
Right.
So, yeah, could you talk about some of your approach with churches and pastors and how, connecting with this content?
Yeah, I this is probably where I most come alive because I can see within the writings of the Gospels, within the writing of the ancient texts, how many times that faith comes across it with suicide. But I mean, let's just start with the quintessential example. Often when we think about suicide within the Bible, we all come to one character very quickly. And often, if you were to respond, like who'd be that person? We think about suicide, who's that person that we often think about? And it's
Oh
often
gosh.
Judas. Like it's Judas is
Oh
square
yeah.
one. Square one,
Yeah.
everyone like Judas. And I want to begin with Judas because I think we have individuals that find relation in Judas. They find like relevance. They're like, okay, I feel like him. So, a couple things about Judas. Number one, he's not the villain in this story. He's just a character in the story. And often, in the context of faith communities, we've villainized this individual. We've made him
Yeah.
the villain. Um, but if we were to recall, we would say that he was one of Jesus's friends. And if you read the red letters, you will see that Jesus never calls him the betrayer. He calls him someone will betray me. He never labels him as the betrayer. He always calls him friend. So,
That's
so,
good.
so
That's
something
good.
for us to relate with this situation. The second thing is this that I like to tell people is that if a suicide is that close to Jesus, because people will say to me like, well, and minister like, okay, well, Jesus never experienced, losing a loved one to suicide, and I go, he had a friend named Judas that he lost to suicide, and in my theological imagination, I can get to a place where I could see what it was like for Jesus potentially in that garden. Maybe some of his tears were because he was losing his friend to suicide. Now, I pause there
Yeah.
because I want us to understand that every year at Easter, Judas dies by suicide, Jesus loses a friend to suicide, and we know this statistically that 6% of America is considering suicide at any given moment. They're thinking about it. That's what the research shows us. On a Sunday at a church, the largest attended church day of the year, there's got to be individuals in that place that relate to Judas that believe, what is that guy on the stage? What is that person on the stage going to say that causes me to either enter into a place of hope, help, and healing, or creates a barrier for me to not get to that? And this is where that
Right.
conversation has to happen because each year and I tell people the best time to talk about suicide is at Easter because every year hope wins, hope arises. And so there's hope in
Yes.
the room. So let's talk about it then. The second side of this is they're like, well, Jesus never dealt with suicidal thoughts himself. And I go, okay, let's talk about that. Let's go to Matthew 4. Matthew 4 says that he first has like his fasting situation, and then it says the funniest verse says, and he was hungry. And I was like, well, no duh, you didn't eat for 40 days, okay? And then I go, then the next one says, the enemy then takes them, the tempter then takes them to say, hey, turn these stones into bread. And he's like, hey, my dad doesn't work at Panera, he's a carpenter. Like literally, he goes through this whole process. And I like this, and I say it comically because the very next set of things that the enemy takes him to is he takes him to a tall building and says, jump.
Jump.
That's okay.
Yeah.
He's been tempted in every way.
Yeah.
The enemy is saying, end your life, take it away, be done. And he goes,
Yeah.
and he says this, he says, don't tempt the Lord.
Yeah.
Don't tempt the Lord.
That's
And I
good.
often will reinforce this idea because people do this. Well, if they love me, they prove it. And here's what I'll tell you. We don't test people's love for us. Like that's the context here because he is love. God is love. Like the whole process, we can unfold this. So those are some
Right.
contexts with the Almighty, with Jesus, fully man, fully God. But there's a scripture that I like to take people to where we talk about this as ministers, and I believe that we should be the ones talking about this as faith entities because, like I said earlier, it's a place of hope and a place of connection and a social connection and hope. That where I can go to a church setting and there should be hope and social connection alive in this place. So I always go to Acts
Amen.
16. In Acts 16, we see a particular situation where Paul and Silas are actually being beaten and flogged. They're being beaten and flogged inside this situation. And what happens is they get put into prison and this jailer. Now, the jailer is the quintessential character for me in this story because I want us to think about this individual because that's all of us. In verse 26, there's an earthquake. This is a real earthquake. I talk metaphorically, a loss of job, a loss of relationship, a child not talking to you, a bad grade on a paper, a missed assignment, whatever that may be, that could be your earthquake moment where this jailer was and says, I'm about to lose my job because the doors flew open, chains came loose. If you're in a
I'm
pen,
going to be blamed for
I'm going to
this.
be blamed for this. In my culture, I'm done. And so
Right.
now what's interesting about that is that he, in verse 28 or verse 27, it says he drew his sword and was about to kill himself. Okay. Verse
I
28 says
love where you're
this,
headed with
but,
this. I love
but
where you're
Paul
headed.
shouted, don't harm yourself. Some translations say, don't kill yourself. We're all here. Which is so intriguing because the jailer earthquake moment says things are all over. He draws his sword and is about to kill himself. And then Paul shouts, don't kill yourself. We're all here. But we know he shouted that in the darkness. How do we know? Because verse 29 says, then the jailer called for the lights, which means it was dark. So here's what I
Wow.
say. It is not our job to turn on the lights for individuals. It's our job to empower them to turn on the lights for themselves.
Come on.
Because here's what goes on. This is all suicide prevention. I call this the first recorded suicide intervention that we see
Oh,
in the
come
ancient
on.
text. Paul intervened. Some people are like, well, the Holy Spirit spoke to him. Or maybe Paul knew the darkness of people's souls when they get to the dark night of the soul, that they felt that loneliness and that anxiety of the anxiousness of the community to say, hey, someone might be at a place of a crossroad right now. So I'm just going to shout this out. Don't kill yourself. We're all here. And then it says the jailer asked for the lights to be turned on, and he rushed to the feet of Paul and Silas. And one of the first times that we saw this, he says, what must I do to be saved? Now here's the eternity, because
Right.
my
I have
job
chills,
as
David.
ministers, as our jobs as ministers, and those that have an opportunity to be at the pulpit, have to understand that there are four individuals being impacted by suicide: those that are thinking about it, those that are worried about it, and we can break these down here in a moment. Those that have lost someone to suicide, and those that have had a suicide attempt. Those four individuals make up 54% of America. Those 54% in your church right now, as ministers, we could have someone who's lost someone to suicide sitting right next to someone who has had a suicide attempt. They're in this congregation. And if I ever have a pulpit or stage at a church, I will scream it. I'll be like, don't kill yourself. And I'll name the city or I'll name the block that they're on. So and so, we're here. And yell it until it vibrates through the community. And this jailer runs, what must I do to be saved? And they said, believe in the Lord. And Paul says this thing. And then the jailer says something so impactful, which I believe is connected to Revelation 5:12. We overcome by the blood of the Lamb and the word of our testimony. And here's what goes on. We have a situation where the jailer now goes home and says, hey, everybody, so today at work, there was like this earthquake and I was about to kill myself because I thought my life was over. And then this guy back here, Paul's naked and bleeding. We know that because they bound up his wounds. They washed them. It says this. And Paul's like, "Hey, what's up?" And he goes, "So that guy said, don't kill yourself. We're all here." And the guy goes, "Do you all want to be saved?"
Yeah.
And that entire household, no, 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 think about this. This is where I go. The entire household was transformed. A generational line was changed because someone was willing to talk about suicide, talk about death, and talk about the fact that don't kill yourself. We're all here. And they were able to do that. But not only that, someone was able to tell their suicide attempt story, the
Ooh.
testimony of overcoming a suicide attempt. Now we have a lived
Right.
experience overcoming that changed the generational trajectory of an entire family line. This is
Wow.
why, as ministers, our job and in a faith community, we should be the best. We should be the best at communicating about death because we understand the eternal promise of hope. So
Yes.
suicide should not be something that we skirt back from, but that we press into, because the enemy's game has always been the same: to kill, steal, and destroy. He runs the same three plays, gaining first downs over and over and over again and scoring because in this, and sorry for the loose illustration there, but because of that, because we skirt back. We skirt back from the context of talking about this subject because we feel ill-equipped. And often, and I'll say this, most of the reason why we don't have the conversation about suicide is emotion, not information. It's
Hmm.
the emotion, fearful, afraid, concerned, embarrassed, unsure. All of those are emotions, not information. And so if we can
Right.
walk into it like Paul didn't have enough information, but what he had was an understanding of people to say, I could understand how somebody would feel dark enough now. Maybe they're considering suicide. What, even if it was one person in the room? I can tell you countless pastors that have not only prayed and used the word suicide from the pulpit in a non-condemning way, in a compassionate way, and I have a friend of mine who at the end of his sermon will pray and say, "Hey, for those considering suicide today or lost someone to suicide," like he'll pray that just like nonchalantly in his prayer as they end the service, and he says, "I have like 5 to 6 people come up to me because I open up the dialogue. But here's what we know: whatever we keep in the dark will stay in the dark until
That's
he
right.
puts light onto it." And so those are things that I think as we learn about how do we as ministers and those within the church can get involved in this conversation, we must begin willing to have the conversation, talk about this dialogue. And I can unpack other stories that we know biblically, but that's what I would encourage ministers to say, hey, let's get involved and let's just actually start talking about it in that process.
I think maybe what ministers need to do is go to our show notes and find out how to get a hold of you so that you can go and share this word of hope with them that they can then
Yes.
share forward.
Yeah.
I I'm so moved by everything that you've just said because we talk about mental health and we talk about we certainly work in non-faith based spaces, and I
Yeah.
know you do as well.
Yeah.
And but when we can take like what we understand of science and
Yeah.
statistics and real world things that are going on, and we can take our faith
Yeah.
and we can put them together with the word of God and offer hope to people, like
It's there.
that's it.
It's there. It's
That's
there.
it right
Yeah.
there. Yeah. Oh my
I will
goodness.
often talk about this idea. I'm like, it's there. Like, there are so many scriptural representations of where suicide had happened. And even if you use the lens, like, let's talk about like one of our famous characters, Samson. Samson was like taking down those pillars. He kills himself and others. And they're like, well, he's doing God's assignment. He's in the Hall of Fame. And here's what I'll tell you: his death was still what we call death by suicide. It was a suicide, what we would originate as a suicide bomber. He took the whole thing down. What about like people don't even think about Jonah. They're like, what do you mean? Like Jonah's rescue was what we talk about. We don't talk about how he got into the water. How he got into the
Right.
water was like, hey guys, I've done something, maybe even a disobedient thing. And like you guys, I'm doing this all, so you guys might just get rid of me. And he had those individuals throw him overboard, which is what we
Right.
call suicide by cop. But God mercifully gave him a rescue answer. So like think about some of these ideas. King Saul, the first king of Israel, like he dies. on his own. He falls on his. That's still a death by suicide.
Right.
But how they honored Saul, this is really a curious thing that I love. They took him
Yeah.
like Jabesh and Gilead and took him to the Taramasic tree. They buried his ashes under the Taramasic tree, which is a symbol of covenant between God and Abraham.
That's right.
What they did is they didn't honor Saul as what he did or hadn't done in their community. They honored him as a beloved member of the community. So
Right.
this is why,
And
as
an instrument of the
of
Lord.
the Lord, right? So this is why we have to, as faith community members, be so great at this because we know how to honor the human because they are made in the imago Dei, no matter
That's right.
what decision they made to end their lives or how their lives ended, I should say.
That's right.
This is where we can come into the complexity of a situation like suicide and bring hope and light in the midst of something that could bring immense darkness to families.
Amen. Amen. So, what would you say are some of the biggest mistakes that ministers make when they're trying to come alongside someone? Like
Oh,
you talked about, here's what to do.
yeah.
I mean, you're not going to call, we're not going to use names, call
No,
anyone
no, no.
out, but like, what's like a major thing that we would not want to do because if you're not aware of how this can be received
Right.
by someone who might be considering, these kinds of issues, then, then you don't know how to act sometimes. So
Yeah.
what's a don't do this kind of thing?
Yeah, I would say for individuals that are like, if you're ministering and you're worried about somebody thinking about suicide, I'm going to say we want to make sure that you understand that giving all of the prescribed reasons why they should live are probably not the helpful thing for them in that moment. What
That's very smart.
what I would say, and I say this jokingly sometimes to people, I'll say what individuals do not find helpful when they're experiencing difficult challenges is what you would read at a Mardell sign or a Hobby Lobby sign. Just refrain from that
Right.
moment saying that. They may want to hear that later. And so what I often will tell people is we default help individuals the way that we feel helped. Like we default that way. Like if you're a person that likes help, when somebody just jumps in, you try to jump in on someone else's pain. But what I want us to understand is sometimes as ministers, we have this temptation, and we have this thing that we have to hold in tension of this rescuer savior idea of ourselves. Like we have that. We have to realize when people are in the midst of this conflict, in the midst of the crisis, our job is not to be the fix it. Our job is not to be the solution oriented. Our job in that moment, and this is why I call it, we in the church, we have missionaries, and there's a great resource called When Helping Hurts. And I go, this is why in
Love
Africa,
that.
yeah, this is why in Africa we have so many playgrounds that have no children on them because we went to their country and said, oh, they just need a playground and this everything will be solved. Versus, hey, what can we help you with to solve this? They're like, actually,
Yeah.
we need two bikes. We need two bikes with two baskets so that we can actually transport this thing. Great. So when someone's hurting in the pain, and this is what I would encourage individuals to do, is to say, our job is not to fix it or even give advice, but what we really should be doing is giving reassurance and information, or what I would call hope with facts. Let's give hope with facts on what we can do this process, not tell them how much they're worth or how valuable they are, because in that moment, their brain actually cognitively cannot process that information. But what it can do is process the information of you just sitting with them, being
Right.
silent, being silent in that. And what we say is lead people to safety and not to solutions. Lead people to safety and not to solutions, where when they feel safe,
That's good.
they actually make healthy choices. So some of the things I would refrain from is understanding that you personally cannot make someone choose to live. Like you do not get to do that. He does through you, but you do not do that. Your job is to be the messenger of hope and be the beacon of light in that situation to say, I can sit with you. I can sit with you in that process. I don't have to say anything. I don't have to do anything. And so, same thing goes with people that have lost loved ones to suicide. Like, how do they see that? What does that look like? And so, what I would encourage ministers to stay away from, but yet actually press into, I should say, is how do they handle grief themselves? What do they
That's a
do?
great
What do they
question.
do with grief and sorrow? When you're met with grief and sorrow as a leader, what do you do with that? Like, what's your tendency? What's your propensity? Because our job is to sit with people in the midst of that and not increase or fast forward the timeline of their grieving process. And so that's for those that have lost someone. For individuals that are considering suicide, I would encourage you to get the training, but the training tells you ask the question directly. Don't skirt away from it. Don't use language like hurting or harming. You're going to use language like, are you thinking about killing yourself? Are you thinking about suicide? Sometimes people going through what you're going through think about suicide. Are you thinking about suicide? Using the direct language and not going around it, but very direct, provides relief for individuals that have been thinking about it and that have been concerned about it. And so those are things that I would encourage and discourage for ministers to navigate that, because I think one of the biggest hurdles for us is that we go silent on this subject. And so
Yeah.
I would discourage silence and encourage the loudness, which provides the loudness of healing for these individuals.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. Again, I really hope we're all taking notes. This is so good. I love what you said about direct language. And I know something that you do in your workshops
Yeah.
is you literally have an exercise where people
Yes.
say these words out loud. And so I would encourage our listeners to do this.
Yeah.
Get a mirror or go find a good friend or a family member. And what would you have them practice?
Yeah, if you're going to practice this, one, practice that language in the mirror just so you can hear yourself say it, so that the reality of those words are there. There's weight in those words, and I understand that. If there's someone that has your best interest in mind, utilizing this and saying the practice of utilizing and asking it twice to that individual, but say, "Hey, I don't want you to respond. I don't want you to respond. I just want to ask it twice just so I can practice. And then if you would like to, would you ask me so I can see what it feels like to be asked that question?" Um, and a lot of individuals are like, it's always awe moments to me, because they'll say something like, I say, "How did that feel for you all to be asked the question?" They're like, "I never felt so cared for.
Right.
I've never felt so seen." They also are even prompted, "I just wanted to answer." And these are responses of individuals that are in those situations that are like, no, that, hey, we're doing a practice thing. But I would encourage you all to just find that. I think even more so, be trained, be equipped, find a training in your area. You can use an organization called Question, Persuade, Refer, or QPR. It's about an hour and a half, 90 minute. Take the training, go through the process. Mental health first aid for adults, youth, or teen. Those are products that you all can utilize. I would even encourage, we have Soul Shop, which is a workshop that does that for faith communities. So get trained in that, but then utilize that language. And so first, remember, we talked about this earlier. Make sure you know who your three are. Then be able to ask that question to somebody. Be as calm, what I say, as a duck. Be a duck. On the surface, you're smooth. Underneath, you're paddling as hard as you can. Okay. But be as calm as that. And then be aware of what you say after they respond. What are your reactions telling you? What's your face saying to you? Utilizing language like that causes people to think. And then you can
Yeah.
say something like this once they responded. Let's say they do say yes and yes, and you're going to get immediate help. Use the number 988. Dial 988 as your crisis. If you don't know what to do, you're like, what do I do next? Dial 988, put it on speakerphone and say, "Hey, I'm with a friend right now, and they let me know that they're considering suicide. Can you help us with our next steps?" You can also ask the individual you're started across once you're with and say, "Tell me how suicide became part of your story. Tell me how suicide became part of your solution," and just let them talk. Just listening by itself may be the thing that they needed in that process, and then continuously leading them on to safety and not to solutions, while being mindful. I'll just say it this way: while being mindful of not making promises that you can't keep. And so just being
Oh,
very, very,
absolutely.
very aware of that. But those would be things, if you want to practice it at home, that's what I would encourage.
Oh, that's great. What's the most surprising part of your work?
The amount of individuals that'll come back to me and say within the last 3 days, I've had to use your question. It always surprises me. It always gets me. I'll have people nonstop. And one of the trainings that I do, I will ask people, just use suicide in a sentence and see what happens. Just see people that will say things like, they'll say, This individual mid 60s told me a story. She emailed me, said, "Thank you so much for the training. This was great." And she said, "I have to tell you this. I went to a coffee shop the next day with my friend, and I told her all she said was this. I told her I went to a suicide prevention training. I said, and she stopped me mid-sentence and said, I've been thinking about suicide and how it won't impact my life insurance." All they did was say that so if you're listening today, all you have to do is tell someone, "Hey, I listened to this podcast talking about suicide prevention." That opened the door.
That could
Open the
open the
door.
door.
Open the door. These are things that I would highly recommend and consider, hey, as resources for this. Even things like American Foundation for Suicide Prevention, AFSP, has phenomenal resources that are available for individuals if they want to learn more about what's going on with suicide prevention. Any of those entities that I talked about earlier, they all have more resources for that. And so they're going to encourage like just utilizing the language itself, like not, and this is where stigma comes in, right? Stigma means the mark of disgrace on someone or something. It's where we get the language for stigmata, the markings on Jesus. We know this, and stigma is synonymous with shame, disgrace, and dishonor, and it comes out in our language. And when I talk about it, I will say you can either be a barrier or a bridge to someone's help, healing, or hope. And stigma is that thing, but what people will understand is this. People will determine if you are a safe person for two reasons: by the actions you take and the conversations they overhear. Like, think about this. This is what's like for us in the faith context. Do you know how many conversations Jesus was having with somebody, but he was actually talking to the crowd?
Right.
Almost all of them. Like, I was like, he wasn't just talking to that person, he's talking to everyone. He understands this concept. People will determine if you're safe by what you do and what they overhear you say to somebody else. These are things that I would encourage us to pay attention to, for us to continue to do that process.
Yeah. Beautiful, beautiful. And so, I know a big emerging topic nowadays is the role of the outdoors and mental
Oh,
health.
yeah.
Can you speak to that?
Yeah, I love the fact that we have the opportunity to be in nature, created by the individual that created us, the Trinity that created us in the thing that he created. What power that is.
Amen.
Everything from grounding techniques to the sounds that you hear to the detoxing that happens when you are in nature, and just purely getting out to feel, smell, and have those sensories activated by the smells of green and tree bark and water and all those things, and the even just the feeling of cold water on your feet and what that does, and the neuropathy that's going on in your body and the neurochemicals that are being fired because of that, feeling rocks and feeling those things. And for us, the nature aspect of this is the opportunity to do what the Psalms say, to that he leads us to green pastures and by still waters. Like, those phrases are not just something for ancient writing, but to understand the concept of what those things mean to us. And so when you talk about the outdoor aspect of all of this, like the aspect that being on a walk or doing that process is such a large protective factor, especially when we do that with the mindset that we're walking with the Trinity, that we're walking with the Holy Spirit. When we say the Paraclete, which means the encourager, that we're walking with, not against, or we're walking with in that process, and the amount of healing that happens, because you are the ownership of the healing process for your life, which requires that you walk, that you move. And even if it's baby crawling or if it's army crawling into that walk, into the hike, into a run, into whatever that process is. So the outdoor aspect of this creates such large um, entities. And my wife would say this all the time. We have a garden during the summer and we have flowers. And I was just asked this question today, like, what are you excited about for the fall? And I said, to not water flowers anymore. Oh my goodness, the amount of flowers that we have, but the therapeutic process that happens in clipping of a flower, in watering and watching it grow, this, like, what it does internally to you is so significant that the encouragement to be outdoors is necessary to remove the noise of what's happening indoors.
There's the title of your book, Remove the Noise That Is Indoor. That is so good. So good. Okay. And let's see. I had a follow up question. Dang it.
No,
What
this
was
is
it?
good.
Oh, no. I got it. What's your go to outdoor activity besides watering flowers, which,
Yeah. I love, and this will sound interesting because I love driving. And so driving windows down and
oh,
just
yeah.
letting that air and hearing water. If I could do anything outdoors, it's going to be by water. Like
Yeah.
whether it's the beach, whether it's a lake, whether it's a river, like it's water. Like it's something
Yeah.
about what water does to me. I like, I even love just water parks, but like the outdoor aspect of that, there's something about it that's just so transformational and so refreshing to use the like term that it's water. It's got to be
Yeah.
water. Yeah, got to be water.
Well, I'm so inspired. I may just quickly go change and take a walk after this. I
I hope
feel
so.
the need. I
Maybe
want
I
to
will. Maybe I will.
feel the outdoors and all the things that God has to offer there.
Yeah.
So what are you seeing in this season? Where are you seeing some the most beauty as you would define it?
You know, redemptively, we experienced a pretty significant tragedy about a year ago in our family.
I'm so
And
sorry.
yeah, and what I see, and the reason why I explain that is because he makes beauty from ashes. And what I see is the beauty of something that has been so traumatically impacting in our family, the beauty that has come out of that, the the ministry that's come out of that, the understanding that's come out of that, the willingness to endure with others and mourn with others authentically and genuinely, and then the hope of what is to be next. Like that beauty that I see within our family, my own family, from that, my nucleus family, that beauty is incredible to me. That I'm glad that you asked me to pause to see that, like what we have seen from that, and what we have gained from that because of it. Is incredible, yet even in the midst of a significant loss. And so I'd have to say the journey that my family's currently on is a beautiful thing to see his hand in the midst of that.
I love that you have brought this up. That in spite of the challenges that whatever this loss was that it brought to you, I love to see that you can see beauty in it.
Yeah.
Like you can see God's hand in the beauty of the redemption of it.
Yeah.
And I know there's people, I know I need to hear it. I know
Yeah.
there's people that are listening that need to hear that,
Hmm.
that there is so much loss and so many challenges just constantly all around us.
Yeah.
And yet there's Romans 8.
Yeah.
And I love to make Romans 8 a verb and say, God is going to Romans 8 this.
Yes.
You
Yes.
know,
Yes.
he's going to take this hard thing and he's going to make it good. I can't imagine what that's going to look like. I can't
Yeah.
even fathom how this could possibly be good. And it doesn't mean that the loss is good, but it can mean that God can take that hard thing
Yeah.
and he can redeem it. And
Yep.
we know that that redemption can be a good thing. So,
Yeah. There's
yeah.
a in our liturgical aspects of our churches, they do a thing called passing of the peace. And like as we come to like just wrapping our time, I want to leave something for our listeners and viewers is this idea that sometimes I want us to pass the hope, just pass the hope. And it sounds as simple as this. My life would not be the same without you, and I'm so glad you're here. Hope be in you. My life would not be the same without you, and I'm so glad you're here. Hope be in you. And allow that to just be in individuals today. So if you do anything after listening to this or do anything with this, just share that with three people. Just share that with three individuals and let them know that my life would not be the same without you. And I'm so glad you're here. Hope be in you.
Wow. So powerful. Thank you so
You're very
much,
welcome.
David. I have been blessed today and I know that our listeners have as well. Thank you for the hope amidst challenges that you have brought for
Yeah.
us today, and for sharing so much of your own journey with all of this.
Yeah.
And, you know, we are better when we are all together in this.
Yes.
And we remind each other that we are together in this. And so, yes, to our listeners, we will say, hope be with you.
Yes.
And we will see you on the trail.